Hello and welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you guys are doing well today. Today we're going to be jumping into an incredibly beautiful Girard Perregaux reference 7901, manufactured in the 1960s. This is not the first piece from Girard Perregaux, the first Sea Hawk that we've had to cover on the channel. So it's kind of exciting to continue the journey of the Sea Hawk on Life on the Wrist. So as always, I'll give you an in-depth look on the history of this piece, as well as some information about the reference, the movement, and the Sea Hawk line. So without further ado, let's get into it. There are collecting arcs, a process in which collectors learn, yearn, and enjoy different types of watches. Part of this arc is complication. Watches with many different functions, and many of them obsolete in today's era. This type of watch is sometimes designed in such a complex way that their dials can feel overwhelming. All the hands and subdials, it can sometimes feel like telling the time is a chore. Simplistic watches have their perks. Sure, it's not as complicated as other watches, but sometimes one needs to take a step back and breathe easily while telling the time. This Girard Perregaux Sea Hawk is an incredible example of an easy living watch. Interestingly, this is not the first time that the reference 7901 has been seen on Life on the Wrist. We actually covered one back in 2019, and I'll leave a link in the description of this video as well as our article on lifeonthewrist.com if you want to see it. The watch was essentially identical to the Sea Hawk we have today with one slight difference: the dial. The 2019 version had an extremely clean and crisp white dial, while today's version, as you can probably tell, has aged just enough to show the warmth of many years that have passed since the 60s when it was manufactured. But before we jump into the watch, let's go through the history of the Sea Hawk. The Sea Hawk was originally launched in the 1940s. Given its name, it was describing the fact that the line of watches would have some sort of water resistance. If you look on the case back here, you can see a screw-down water-resistant case back. The Sea Hawks of this era were military-style watches that had manual wind movements. Going into the 1950s, Girard Perregaux began experimenting with other designs for the line of watches. They wouldn't be described as dress watches, but sort of straddled between dress and military-style pieces. The 1960s was really when the brand changed the overall feel of the Sea Hawk. Instead of using military styling for their pieces, the Sea Hawk became more of a dress watch, mainly steel pieces with some gold-plated watches as well. The watches were typically time-only in complication and used manual wind movements. And they also increased the size of the pieces to the 34mm mark. The reference 7901 is a good example of what the 60s had in store for the Sea Hawk. This reference came in many dial variations, some with applied number hour markers, others with stick hour markers. You can actually see two dial variations in two advertisements for the article on lifeonthewrist.com if you want to see the two style variations. This version of the 7901 has a stainless steel case that's overall in really great condition. The case shows signs of age with some scratches throughout. If you look at the bottom right lug, you'll probably notice a larger scratch that you can see on it, which kind of tells the time, or tells the sort of story of how this watch has sort of gone. The watch features these rectangular lugs that are long and extend quite flat. If you look at the side view of this case, flatly from the case. The watch sits pretty comfortably on the wrist given the lug design. And if you look, the crown of this watch is unsigned. But the kicker of this watch, as I mentioned before, really is the dial. The white dial that we see on the 2019 version of this watch that we had in has a beautiful light hue of patina with large applied hour markers. What's really nice is you'll see that some spots are still developing that even patina, but I think overall it makes it look so nice. And if you combine it with a strap like this, it kind of accentuates the patina that you see on this dial. Sorry about the focus here, chaps. The hour markers, as I mentioned, are large and really legible. Thankfully, the dial is so uncluttered that it makes the watch extremely easy to read, and the empty space allows for the patina to kind of shine through as a very important characteristic of the watch. You'll also see concentric circles, a concentric circle pattern on the subsidiary seconds dial. That's also really attractive to look at and almost replaces the complications that one sees on other watches and would typically be mesmerized by. Really what you're looking at here, and I'll try and bring it up a little bit closer so you can see, is a very simple dial, no complications, but beautiful aging and finishing on the stainless steel watch. As far as markings go on the case of the watch, the reference and serial number of the piece can be found between the lugs, and I don't think you're going to see it here, but you might be able to if I focus it there, but it's on the bottom of the lugs here. The outside case back, if you look on the case back of this watch, you'll see stainless steel written here on the where my left thumb is, indicating that the case metal used for the watch was stainless steel. Inside the case back, we have pictures of this on our article, has the Girard Perregaux stamp as well as stainless steel written on it. During this era, Swiss watch companies typically imported movements from Switzerland to the USA market separately from their cases because they would avoid paying higher import taxes and duties. This watch movement has the import code GXM written on it, which was the import code used by Girard Perregaux to import their movements. There are no markings on the case to indicate that the watch's case was manufactured in the USA or it doesn't, because there's no marking of the case maker, it makes it difficult to know who actually produced this stainless steel case for Girard Perregaux. But one could assume either the manufacturer of the case did not stamp it, or the case was manufactured in Switzerland alongside with the movement. Again, there are images of this, but on our article. But the watch is running on the caliber GP 12.4 manual wind movement. The movement is a 13-line manual wind movement with 42 hours of power reserve. The movement is based on the AS 1640, and there are very few modifications that were made by Girard Perregaux. There were many variations of this caliber, and the 12.3 caliber is more common than the 12.4, so you are, rarity in movements, these were mass-produced watches, so rarity probably isn't the right way to define it, but it is less common than the 12.3. There were many variations of this caliber, and the 12.3 used the Inca Block anti-shock device, whereas the 12.4 uses a KIF Ultraflex anti-shock device. The Inca Block system are more common watches, but neither really is supreme to the other. If you look at the jewel on the balance wheel, and you'll go to our website to see the picture of the movement, you'll actually see that the top of the gold-toned spring, you'll see that the top of the gold-toned spring that provides the shock absorption. So that's really where you can see the difference in the shock system. While the movement is not finished to the standards of something like a Patek Philippe movement, the industrial finishing is quite attractive to look at, and the way that the movement is put together, it actually feels as if there is a almost like one of those 3/4 plates that's seen on A. Lange & Söhne movements. So it's kind of a cool thing to look at. On the wrist, as I mentioned, this is a 34mm case. And you can, as I mentioned, the lugs are fairly flat. It makes the watch sit actually quite large. And honestly, it's a very attractive piece, especially given that light patina that you see. It's almost like the quintessential stainless steel watch with that beautiful light patina. So simplistic in design, but as one can tell, it's so enjoyable to look at. I actually had someone comment on an Instagram post that we made that they thought the watch was actually 37mm in diameter. So time-only pieces are actually important for collectors. If executed well by a watchmaker like this Girard Perregaux reference 7901, it reminds the collector of the fact that proportions, dial layout, finishing, legibility, and age are all important factors with vintage watches. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this Girard Perregaux reference 7901 Sea Hawk with its very, very simplistic time-only dial, but beautiful patina. I think it's a really great example of what collectors kind of look at. You know, I think there's polar opposites when it comes to collecting, right? Either you really love watches that show their age and have that sort of, you know, real deep patina, but then you can also find pieces on the other end of the spectrum where they're in overall really great condition and the patina is just enough to kind of give the collector the feeling that the watch has aged just a bit. And I think the way that the dial of this piece has slowly turned to that light sort of brownish yellow hue, I think is a really great example. And you can still see some of the white of the dial on some sections that haven't completely turned. So I think this is an incredibly unique, looking piece, and it's a great example of what patina can be on one end of the spectrum. As I mentioned in the video, there is an article on lifeandthearth.com if you want to see pictures of this watch, as well as the movement and the inside case back. There will be pictures on lifeandthearth.com. Head over to the editorial section, you'll find the article for this piece if you want to read about it and see those pictures. So you can kind of understand the 12.4 movement and some of the inside case back engravings. As always, if you are new to Life on the Wrist, be sure to subscribe to the channel and share this video with a friend who might be interested in watches. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about this Sea Hawk. My question for today is, do you own a Girard Perregaux Sea Hawk? Do you enjoy, and my second question is, do you enjoy seeing patina like you see on this dial of this piece? If you wouldn't mind liking this video, it really does help me out. With this said, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and until next time.